Dr. Rose, can you hear me? All right. He can't. He can. He can.
Yes.
Yes, he said. All right. So let's move on to this next part, right? So Dr. Michael Rose, he is a distinguished professor from the University of California, Irvine, California, sorry. And he is a distinguished professor of biology at the University of California, Irvine. He has been studying the biology of aging since 1976. He has received several scientific prizes, including the inaugural Bacon Prize in 2019. After more than 300 academic articles and 10 academic books, his latest book, called or named Conceptual Breakthroughs in the Evolutionary Biology of Aging, co-authored with Kenneth Arnold. It was published 2 years ago. So please help me welcome Dr. Rose today.
Thank you so much. It's great to see so many of my favorite people in the world. And what I can promise you is that my presentation will be a lot less exciting than what you did. But I hope it will clarify some things that maybe I have not done a good job of clarifying before. That's for you to decide. And, you know, I welcome questions, comments, and so on in reaction to what I have to say. My understanding of the title of my talk is that it is Health versus Medicine for Immortalists. Okay? And I'm just going to assume that everybody who is listening to me now is an immortalist. Right. Which means you are only interested in indefinite lifespans. You're not interested in 70. You know, you're not interested in cryonics. You want to be around here indefinitely. Right. Okay. So this is for us within our community. Right. All right. So as you know, I have been doing research on immortality specifically for 30 years and trying to convince people that biological immortality is a real thing, it's an important thing, and it's something that we should be focused on. And in case there's any ambiguity about this, biological immortality, right, is not Greek immortality. You can die given enough bad luck, but if you're biologically immortal, you've stopped aging and potentially are getting even younger. Okay? So that's what's at stake. Now, the topic of today is health versus medicine. And I'm mostly going to talk about health, but let me just give my perspective on medicine. Medicine is the treatment of well-defined diseases. And you might say, what is a disease? A disease is anything that physicians regard as a disease. Yeah. Not more or less. Right. And that is in many ways the disease concept of medicine is one that's partly political, partly commercial, heavily influenced by insurance companies, and also commercial in the sense that it's influenced by pharmaceutical companies. Okay? And it's not my objective to talk anybody out of going to an emergency room. I'm not trying to persuade people to skip medical appointments, although I have my own perspective on medical appointments that I'm going to get to. I'll just conclude the medical part of today's talk with the following point. I can't tell you how many doctors I have known or heard about who lead really unhealthy lives and often die young,
Yeah,
sometimes in absolutely tragic circumstances.
very true.
If, if you really want to look after your health, as opposed to your specific diseases, I don't know that physicians are your best guide posts to what you need to do for your health. So now that I've got us all being immortalists out of the way, now that for the time being, I've got the question of medicine out of the way, let's focus 100% on health. And in the immortalist community, I think we all agree that the more we can do for our health, the more we are setting ourselves up for biological immortality. So that's what I'm taking as the uncontroversial starting point for everything I'm going to say, starting now. Because there is actually a huge hidden controversy, which I've alluded to in passing in the past, but now I would like to squarely address. Because there are two fundamentally different concepts of health in the immortalist community. And those two concepts of health lead to completely different views of how soon you can get to biological immortality. And as some of you know, and is very important to me and how I interact with you, I believe that some of you are already biologically immortal. So let's start with the overwhelmingly popular conception of health, even in the immortalist or anti-aging community. And I call that concept, in an academic context, cell molecular reductionist mechanisms of aging. But today, I'm just going to call it the Rusty point of view. This point of view is effectively that aging is rust, some type of biochemical cellular breakdown. And in that context, if you're a rusty immortalist, then you believe that perfect health is the complete absence of cell molecular damage. And in this model, you start out life, maybe as a fetus, maybe at the time of birth, completely free of all cell molecular damage. Okay. Now, just to be clear, I'm not saying that cell molecular damage is a controversial point. Yes, you can have damage to your molecules, to your cells, to your tissues, to your organs, to your limbs, and so on. Damage occurs. Damage occurs among children. Damage, in my view, occurs among the biologically immortal. So I'm not saying there's no such thing as damage. What I'm doing first, in the first half of my talk, is I'm going to talk about all the consequences of being a rusty immortalist. Okay? And you know, and have heard many rusty immortalists speak. The most famous rusty immortalist in the world is, of course, Aubrey de Grey, whom I consider a personal friend, a sparring partner, and generally fascinating human being. Okay? So nothing about what I'm going to say reflects any personal hostility or animus. Aubrey has done a lot of very good things for the anti-aging movement generally and for the Coalition for Radical Life Extension in particular. Okay? But you have to think things through. And today, I'm going to be talking about what does it really mean to be a rusty immortalist? And then I'm going to turn to a second kind of immortalist, which I am and some of you are. So if you're a rusty immortalist and you believe that everything is about cell molecular damage, then there's the obvious solution that Aubrey really brought forth to the world about 25 years ago. And I was in the room when he first made this proposal. And he said, well, if aging is cell molecular rust, which causes all this damage, the most elegant thing to do is to fix the damage, wipe out the rust. Now, that is such a powerful and elegant idea. It has captivated, I'm guessing, at least hundreds of thousands of people and perhaps millions of people all around the world. So for the next 10 minutes, roughly, I'm going to be talking about the history of rusty immortalism and its implications for the future. I'm sorry about the history thing because, I'm a recovering professor. I'm retired now, but old habits die hard. The idea of rusty aging was first proposed in the 1950s by two very important figures. Denham Harman in 1956 proposed what's called the free radical damage theory of aging. But all of aging was literally rust, meaning the oxidation of biological molecules like proteins and lipids. That is literally rust. In 1959, one of the chief contributors to the atomic bomb project, Leo Szilard, proposed that no, it was somatic mutation, which we now know of as DNA damage, which was the entire key to aging. And in having this difference of opinion, they started a classic pattern that continued from the 1950s to 2000, where different rusty ideas were argued as the single central rusty mechanism. And this just went on in the 1960s. In 1961, Leonard Hayflick discovered the finite replication of our cells in our body, which is, we now know, due to telomere attrition. So if you're a telomere diva, like Greta Blackburn, you're saying, well, the telomeres are the key. Although in an interview I filmed with her in July, she's retracted that point of view. But anyway, in 1963, a man called Leslie Orgel proposed an idea called the translation error catastrophe theory, which is a complete mouthful, and it's really complicated to understand. But the good news is that people in my field, evolutionary biologists, completely destroyed this idea in the 1960s and early 70s, so you don't even have to think about it. So 4 different rusty ideas have been proposed by 1970, one of which was killed very fast by people in my field, evolutionary biology. But in 1970, a fair statement would be that there were 3 different rusty mechanisms, all competing for attention. In the 1970s to 1990s, 4 more were proposed. Mitochondrial damage, which is one of Aubrey de Grey's favorites. Amyloidosis, which is the key, it was thought, to the genesis of Alzheimer's disease. In 2000, Aubrey did us all a favor by saying, oh, what if all of these rusty mechanisms are real and act, and they're the sum total of what causes aging? And all we have to do is fix those 7 rust mechanisms, okay? And that's the whole point of his book, Ending Aging. Now, there are 2 problems you may not be aware of if you're a Rusty de Grey fan, sorry. One is that at least 2 more mechanisms were discovered by 2013, and they were called hallmarks of aging, and in 2013, there were 9. Over the 10 years after that, 3 more were discovered. There were 12. rusty mechanisms of aging. So here's the problem with rusty immortalism. The solution to aging as rust is supposed to be repair of the rust. Okay? So I ask you a very simple question. Is repair eliminating these mechanisms of rust, these mechanisms of damage, as fast as we discover them? Because remember, in the 1950s, there were two. The end of 1960s, there were still three. In 2000, there were seven. 2013, nine. Now there are at least 14. In my lab, we actually do research on how many mechanisms at the molecular level there are that underlie aging. Our estimate is hundreds of mechanisms. Have any of the rusty anti-aging people vanquished any of these mechanisms of rust? I think the best case for this is telomere attrition, because you can give people telomerase, as some of you may have already done for yourselves, and largely stop telomere attrition. So the short answer is one of these mechanisms has been alleviated. We have been steadily discovering new ones on the order of 2 a decade. And our research indicates there are dozens and dozens more. So if you're a rusty immortalist, I think the prognosis is pessimism, even if you believe everything that the rusty immortalists believe. So your only salvation will be giving more money to the Longevity Escape Velocity Foundation, or SENS, if it's still taking funds. I suggest that that's a very pessimistic approach, and I suggest that if you stay with that approach, you will die with and for these rusty dogmas. These dogmas of immortalism based on the idea that aging is this steady biochemical process of rusting, affecting all the molecules and cells in your body. I'm sorry to say that. I don't think I've ever said it as clearly as I've said it today. But if you're a rusty, you may want to look into cryonics. And many of my rusty friends have given up on rusty immortalism and have, in fact, completely committed to having themselves frozen. Because the rate of progress in alleviating the 14 hallmarks of aging has been too slow. It's basically been one of those mechanisms has been stopped in the last 60 years. One. Okay, that's just not fast enough, even if you accept everything that Aubrey de Grey says. Now, there's a completely different definition of health and a completely different immortalism, which is the definition I've been using in the course of my 30 years of research on biological immortality, research in which we have been able to retune the cessation of aging and the achievement of biological immortality without changing any of the rust mechanisms. Some of those interventions are genetic and evolutionary, but some of them are dietary, and I'll talk about those things. So if you're an evolutionary immortalist, what do you think health is? If you're an evolutionary immortalist, health comes down to a combination of two things. One is, simply enough, your ability to survive, or in recently popularized language, don't die. And the other one is your ability to do something useful while you're alive, which to an evolutionist means producing offspring if you're young, or if you're older, caring for your offspring, your grand offspring, your great nieces, your great grandnieces, and so on. because in the world of evolutionary biology, that reflects your level of adaptation or fitness, Darwinian fitness. And that is the entire focus of evolutionary biology, evolutionary theory, and all evolutionary biologists believe the entire focus of the evolution of life itself. This is what life is all about, is achieving health and evolution, regular old evolution by natural selection, produces biological immortality all the time. As I've said, there in Scottsdale years ago, you're the product of cell lineages that have been multiplying and dividing for hundreds of millions of years. You are a product of evolutionary immortality. You carry immortality within you. And if you heard me talk as a footnote to Jim's talk in Las Vegas, you can feel that immortality within you as, in the language you now use, a divine spirit. That divine spirit, which Jim has also called the immortal germline, it is an immortal germline. It can speak to you if you open your mind to it, okay? But in addition to your mind, that evolutionary immortalism, the biological immortality that it gives you, should speak to all the scientists and technologists who study immortality, because even if in 2156 people finally stop all 80 mechanisms of rust, and that leaves you in great shape, why should you wait that long in cryonic suspension, having given up on life? Is this going to take them at least that long and their rate of progress? One rusty mechanism solved every 60 years. It's grim. Now, just as a footnote, everything I'm saying today is scientifically well-founded. We've done experiments, we've done mathematics, we've published in leading journals, we've published books. It's all summarized in my book with Kenneth Arnold that came out 2 years ago. If you want the footnotes, they're all there. In 2011, I summarized evolutionary immortalism in 55 sentences, which, following, since we're being sort of biblical, I've noticed, over the last couple of years, following the spirit of Martin Luther, I posted online, not in a cathedral, 55 theses, 55 sentences that define evolutionary immortalism. And there's no data, there's no math, there are no references there, totally unlike all the books and papers I publish. So if you're not into the whole academic thing, I'm hoping that Mariana or someone can distribute the 55 theses to you. But I want to conclude with the following emotional appeal. Okay. I think not being a rusty immortalist is emotionally good for you. And I'm going to illustrate that point with 2 examples. One for everyone who's part of People Unlimited. You have an evolutionary immortalist among you. Zara, stand up, Sarah, wave. Come on, stand up, wave. There you see evolutionary immortalism made flesh, okay? No rusty immortalism. And if you want inspiration, please talk to her. Please follow her example. She is the most dedicated evolutionary immortalist I've ever known. And I personally find her an inspiration. Now, the second best, Sarah is amazing. She's fantastic. The second best thing I can do for you is talk about some of the lived experience of me and my friends. And none of us are as exquisitely perfect as Zara, okay? She is the gold standard. She is your golden immortalist, all right? She's the real deal. And some of what I'm going to say, Sarah knows very well, and it's taken to heart. But I'm just going to say it again in my usual Canadian understated way. It's going to be less exciting, less immediate, but maybe a little more useful for those of you who are rusties or of rusty sympathy. What evolutionary immortalism tells you is that the best foundation for your health is to go back in your personal evolutionary time as you get biologically or chronologically older. That means, for example, if you're from Southeast Asia and you're 35 years old and you have some health problems, they could well be due to the dairy foods that you're not adapted to. If you're a European and you're over 60, grain and milk products may have been perfectly healthy for you all through your life into your 50s, but now they're giving you anything from irritable bowel syndrome to reflux disease to stomach ulceration and so on. You have to go back to before the time of agriculture, once you're in your 50s and 60s, and go back to the best emulation of a hunter-gatherer diet and lifestyle you can. What does the lifestyle part mean? It means activity, especially walking, way more than you want to. It means sleeping way more than your employer wants to, or maybe your spouse or children want you to. And it means tribe. And the great thing about People Unlimited is, boy, you got tribe. And the greatest thing about People Unlimited is it's an immortalist tribe. So if you're an immortalist, and I think you all are, and you're at People Unlimited, you've got your immortalist tribe. And that is a spectacular asset, almost as good as cleaning up your diet and getting rid of the junk food, the pizza, at least pizza made from grain, not cauliflower. So I've said all those things before, but now I'm going to get a little more detailed on the choice between being a rusty immortalist and an evolutionary immortalist. I'm sorry, this is my second point, you can't trust the rusties. I don't think they're malign. I just think they're scientifically wrong. And I think technologically they're deadly. Because I think the only way for you to survive indefinitely if you're a rusty is to go to cryonics. That's your best shot. Sorry. Sometimes rusties are right. And I think some of the individual ideas that rusties have, like addressing telomere attrition, are perfectly good ideas. But some of them may be wrong. So for example, reducing your intake of free radicals is a very important part of your physiology that uses free radicals. That's the destruction of cancer cells. Your adaptive immune system has killer cells that use free radicals to destroy cancer. Do you want to stop that by increasing your consumption of antioxidants? I don't know that you do. I think that's dangerous advice. You can't trust the rusties, even if sometimes they're right. Now I'm going to go back to medicine. And I'm going to hit a theme I've spoken about at RadFest. Your physicians don't expect to live indefinitely, and they don't expect you to live indefinitely. And their point of view is they're managing your sustained progression toward death. And you don't want that. None of us want that. So you have to have a healthy skepticism about what your physicians will recommend. And I'm going to tell you a story from my own medical history, okay? I had this problem in the 1990s. It rhymes with third carriage. And this third carriage was making me really miserable, and I had really bad acid reflux. So they said, well, take Prilosec, which is generically known as omeprazole. And I did. And it helped address the acid reflux problem. It didn't address the fundamental problem with the third carriage, which I solved by other means. Then later on in the 2000s, I read an article in JAMA, the Journal of the Medical Association, American Medical Association, that revealed that those people who took Prilosec instead of Pepcid had a 50% increase in their death rate. So I take the article, I march into my physician's office, and I said, so you understand that the thing that you're recommending to me, this over-the-counter medication, is increasing my death rate by 50%. And of course, being a normal American physician, he said, no, I didn't know that, because it's impossible for physicians to keep up with even medical research, much less all the other important research in biology. So I said, well, here's a Xerox of the article. Please tell your colleagues. I went on to Pepcid. Then these physicians discover I have low-grade kidney disease. And around that same time, it's discovered that the mechanism by which Prilosec increases your death rate, the number one mechanism is kidney disease. They gave me kidney disease with their medical therapeutic recommendation, and I still have it. Okay? It's minor. It's probably not going to shorten my lifespan. Okay? But that's because I do all these other things to sustain my health as an evolutionary mortalist. Doctors save lives every day. A physician could save your life next week. Okay? If you need to go to the ER, go to the goddamn ER. If you have good medical insurance, never hesitate to go to the ER. Okay? Just don't trust physicians' recommendations with respect to maintaining your chronic health, because they're not even trained to do that. They're trained to treat specific diseases. Okay? I may have some differences with the Trump administration, but Make America Healthy Again, I think, is a great slogan. It's what we need. Okay? And some people are being doctored to death, and I could have been one of them. So for me, it's personal. All right? If I had the respectful attitude to physicians that most people have, I might be dead now. Okay? Don't approach your physician with reverence. Understand that they don't believe in immortalism. Okay. Last point, a point of radical optimism. Lifestyle can stop the aging of any of you in your 70s. And that's what Zara's done. Okay? I'm looking forward to my aging, now that I'm 70, stopping in a couple of years. All right? I can't stop the aging of people in their 50s. I wish I could, but I can't. But people in their 70s, like you have seen Zara do over the last 6 years, she has stopped aging. You can do that too. And the beauty of stopping your aging now, not as a cryonic corpsicle in the 22nd century, the beauty of stopping aging now is you can wait patiently, not desperately, for an entirely new generation of therapeutics that will be founded on the synthesis of three things: the evolutionary biology of aging, omics, which means genomics, transcriptomics, metabolomics, and three, the spectacular new omically based interventions that people like Liz Parrish is pioneering, interventions that may involve DNA, RNA, metabolites, but that use the best of our evolutionary, genomic, and other insights, which are not predicated on rusty myths or indeed rusty ideas whatsoever. And I think that those new therapeutics are going to arrive very soon. I will conservatively say within a decade. Possibly Liz Parrish has already identified some. She is risking her life to see if she has, which I think is very brave. I'm not going to recommend that you take any of her current therapeutics right now, but I think in 10 years, we could know which ones will work. And we will know them because we will have better information than we've ever had before. My final words. Do you really want to live? Do you really want to stay alive? Do you really want to be healthy and not a burden? Do you really want to care for your grandchildren or great-grandchildren? I'm afraid you can't do it using rusty ideas. They lead to cryonics, and they lead to a conjectured and optimistic resuscitation in the 22nd century. Maybe. I suggest you go with evolutionary immortalism and stop aging in your 70s and live well into your hundreds. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rose. First, I want to remind everyone that you're going to find all these presentations in the website. So if you want to look for it, or you're going to have all the information right there. And we have time for a few questions. So does anybody? Sure. Yeah. Where's the green mic? Where's the green one? This one. Oh, there is.
Hi, Michael.
Hey, dude.
If I understood you correctly, you said that the body essentially has all the evolutionary ingredients to either stop or reduce aging, but not the mechanisms to execute. Is that correct?
No. The first part is right. The second part is wrong.
Okay.
So on our ancestral diet, if you're, white Euro trash like you and me, our best estimates are that aging will stop sometime in your 70s if you revert to an ancestral lifestyle. Possibly if you have no corruption with adaptation to agriculture and you revert to your normal, almost immediate ancestral way of life, like was true in New Guinea and Australia before the Europeans arrived, you might stop aging in your 60s. And the body is primed and ready to do that. It doesn't need any molecular or other medical intervention to do that.
All right.
Thank you.
Next. All right. Can we have a question online? Mariana says. Online. But I can't read it. No. Okay, thank you. Would it be possible to get the presentation from Michael Rose? I wasn't available to hear it. It is in our website, so you can just go there and grab all the information. Thank you. Anybody here in the room? Yeah.
Hi, Michael. One of the best presentations I've heard you do. Yeah. Really, really to the point. Really good. Thank you. Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay. I think for, what I want to get to, and I pretty much understand it, but because you said, you addressed it a few times, but so we're going to our ancestral diet idea. Okay, I'm a revolutionary immortalist in that context, or excuse me. I'm sorry.
Biohacker?
No, I'm a biological. Yeah. Immortalist, so I'm not a rusty. Okay, so I don't eat quite as clean. I don't think as Sarah. I've been out to eat with her, and she'll question the waiter for 15 minutes, and which I actually admire, about everything that's put in the food. So, but I eat and fundamentally for your recommendation, like we talked about one time we were dinner together. It's kind of ancestral-ish, right? So there's a few things that you have to, but. So my point being, though, is that are you saying also, to be clear, that it's not necessary or complimentary for for a person to take, say, certain supplements they think boost their immune system, might be like through COVID, might be vitamin A, zinc, et cetera, especially if you're traveling, things like that. Are you saying that that's not something you recommend, or are you saying there are supplements you do recommend that one should do to boost their immune system? Are there any that you do recommend?
Okay, Jim, that is one of the best questions you've ever asked me.
Oh, thank you. Well, I did ask you about your wife one time, so I thought that was pretty.
Which one? Which one?
Go ahead.
I have a carriage problem. So the problem with the modern world is that the soil in which our crops are grown and the crops that are fed to the animals that we eat, that soil has been depleted of minerals due to repeated cycles of agriculture. That's why I think many, many people are deficient of really basic minerals like magnesium, zinc, potassium. It's a long list. And even more subtly, the vitamins that we need are also depleted by somewhat different mechanisms. So thoughtful supplementation, I think, is required to do a good job of emulating the ancestral diet and to some extent lifestyle. You see, because just like what we call a cow is not the way cows used to be,
Right.
when they were feeding on less depleted, mineral and nutrient depleted grass. Say nothing of corn. Like a corn-fed cow, it's not the same animal nutritionally.
Okay, understood. Okay, so in other words, it's good to thoughtfully supplement,
Yes.
Yes, okay, understood. So some of that could be based on your blood work, what's going on, et cetera. Okay. So
I highly recommend blood work.
yeah, so the other question is that, so you follow the ancestral diet. Now, you've explained this a little bit before, but you're so much more candid now. That's probably because you're not having to be tied to the university now, so you're really out there. Yeah, exactly. I love it. So the ancestral diet, our ancestors back then, they died. They ate this way. They're not alive today. But from where you explained it from one time, and I wanted to be clear about that, you're saying that was because of other infections, lack of proper sanitation, et cetera. This is why they died, not because, and so in other words, if that didn't exist, if they had clean sanitation, everything else that we have today, are you saying they may have lived then from that, because they were eating that way? They may have lived for hundreds of, or maybe, maybe thousands of years, possibly? Or there are other factors?
The Man from Earth is one of my favorite movies.
Yes, I saw that.
Because it's a movie about biological immortality. It's based on a rusty idea. And there are good scientific reasons for why it's fundamentally incorrect. But basically, if you stop aging, then the question is, how much can medicine do to stop you from dying from accidents? Where an accident might be a blood clot in the wrong place, right?
Yeah.
Causing lung embolism, heart attack, or stroke. Or the accident might be like having your foot mangled, which can cause sepsis, gangrene, and death. Or the accident might be the development of a cancerous tumor, which can happen to anybody at any age, but of course the probability tends to go up with age. Although I will point out it also plateaus, your cancer risk plateaus later in life. So of course, 25,000 years ago, we had no effective medicine. So many accidents could kill you. There weren't that many people alive. You did have a non-zero probability of living 200 years, but it was extremely tiny just because of all of the accidents that you could die from that they didn't have any medicine to keep you alive. One of the great good things about modern medicine now is, you have a blood clot, they have all kinds of things they're going to do. If the blood clot is in your heart, they'll try to break it up as fast as they can so it doesn't kill any heart tissue.
Right.
And so on. If you develop a tumor somewhere, and it's a solid tumor, they can excise most of them. Okay. And so on and so on. So modern medicine is a beautiful complement, meaning not the same as, but combining well with biological immortality produced by evolutionary means. And by evolutionary means, I mean like what Sarah does. Okay. Like you guys live with this every week, right? You live with the example of evolutionary immortalism right there in your midst.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Well, I get this question from different people at times when I talk about you and ancestral diet, and they say, well, how come our ancestors didn't live long if they were on that diet? Of course, I come back and say, well, like you're saying, the infections, et cetera, et cetera. But so are you saying had they not had all those factors that they might have, or most likely would have lived a lot longer? Because they
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't think there's anything bizarre about
that's
saying.
The only factor. That's the only factor. That was the only factor was the
accident.
Okay.
What I'm calling accident.
Uh-huh.
What I'm calling accident is most of medicine.
Okay.
Like most of medicine is about accidental bad things that can happen to you in principle at any age, but tend to happen to you more with age. But children can get cancer, young adults can get cancer.
Right.
I had a graduate student who had a stroke, around the age of 30. All these bad things can happen to you.
Sure.
And now we have great technology for enabling you to survive those things.
Uh-huh. Understood.
Okay. So I'm not saying, just eat ancestral and you'll never need to see a doctor again. I never say that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm saying, go to biological immortality as soon as you can, which depends on your ancestry. And once you're there, have a very constructive relationship with doctors where you do the things that they want you to do that work, and you try to avoid the things that they will do to you that will kill you faster.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you very much. Well, looks like we have a question back here, one more.
Thank you very much, Michael. Back to the ancestral diet issue. How precise do we need to be with that? Like in my case, it's mainly Sweden and the UK. How do I apply? How do I look for an ancestral diet knowing that's where most of my ancestors came from?
Okay, are you over 50?
Yes, but not much.
Okay. There's actually some very deep mathematics and science behind the idea that as you go backward in time, we evolutionarily implode on the same fundamental set of adaptations. So the details of your ancestry matter a great deal between the ages of 5 and 50, okay? But after 50, we're all converging on the same fundamental ancestral needs.
Okay.
And that's actually a result very much analogous to black hole effects in physics, believe it or not. Once you're over 50, we all have to do the same things.
Yeah.
It's not specific.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right. You want to say something? Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Rose. Thank you. Yes.
My pleasure.
Let's give it up for him again. All right. You coming back to the stage? What are we doing? It is 5. Okay.